My name is Alex Malfero, and I'm a painter, but I also like to consider myself a storyteller, and that for me the canvas becomes a place to hold an entire narrative within its frame. At an early age, I developed a fascination with fairy tales and folklore. I'm from a small town in South Dakota and the middle child of 9, but not only am I one of 9 children, I'm also an only child. My parents both had kids before me when they were in high school. They met, got married, had me, divorced, and moved hours apart from each other, eventually remarrying and having more children. I was often left with my grandmothers or other family members, so it makes sense why I turned to these stories for solace and comfort. They became an escape from my chaotic life. It's not just fantastical stories that have helped me understand my place in the world. It's also stories that are passed down generationally, from grandparents to parents to children. These familial stories have given me something to latch onto. They reassure me of my existence. As my knowledge expanded and my work developed, this interest in fairy tales also grew. I wanted to look deeper into them. Why do I turn to them for answers? Why do I turn to them for comfort? Why has society passed them down for centuries? What makes these stories so important to us? I think for me, being able to find a relationship between my life and that of some fantastical character is what has helped and continues to help me through a lot of difficulties. A key factor with these stories is that generally the main character goes through some traumatic event, but ultimately they find their way out. It may sound corny, but I find this really motivational, where I know that I am capable to get through anything because somebody else has, or at least someone has had similar thoughts as mine and created a story around those thoughts. One example of a correlation between my life and one of those characters is Lewis Carroll's Alice. I made this 8-foot-tall painting shortly after moving to San Francisco because I found a connection between my story and Alice's. When she was falling through that rabbit hole, she was met with confusion, curiosity, and wonder. Up was down and down was up. I related to her after moving from small town South Dakota to San Francisco, California. Not only had I moved to one of the weirdest cities in the world, I was also attending art school, so you can imagine what a culture shock that was. I was confused, excited, alone, happy, scared, just filled with emotions. I wanted to translate those feelings into a painting. I continued finding these similarities between myself and fantastical characters. And another example is the Headless Horseman. What I did with this drawing is I was exploring the in-between of being a child and becoming an adult, questioning sexuality, vulnerability, all these insecurities that come with that transition. My life was just full of fairy tales at this point, and I actually spent quite some time researching Snow White, and eventually I literally became Snow White, and so I made this sculpture to show that. After spending a few years directly referencing fairy tales, I moved in a different direction. my focus shifted to the influence these fairy tales have on memory. What I discovered was that memories become myths that we create for our own entertainment. We heighten them and we embellish them. So I dug into my personal archive and began mining family photos for my paintings. I began to shake this romanticized perspective on the American domestic sphere by combining fantastical color schemes with these images of family dysfunction. What I found and what I find really appealing in these photos is the wistful look that a lot of the people have in them. I think a lot of it has to do with the high number of young parents that run in my family line. It seems to be this cycle that keeps on going, kids having kids having kids. With that, I started to focus on the relationship between the children in my family and the young parents that were producing these children, kids having kids. There tends to be this push and pull interaction in the photos where the parents look like they're, taking care of these kids, but really they're trying to comfort themselves. I think many people can relate to the idea of a complicated family dynamic. So what I decided to do was leave out the multitude of objects that were surrounding the figures in my earlier work. By removing the unnecessary noise created by those objects, there becomes room for viewers to embroider their own narratives into the artwork. To that end, I would like to leave you with the words of Lewis Carroll. And though the shadow of a sigh may tremble through the story, for happy summer days gone by and vanished summer glory, it shall not touch with breath of bale the pleasance of our fairy tale.